So I thought I'd make a little video of my exploration of this Technics linear tracker, QL15. And so what happened was it was just dropping the needle and just skipping on that track. And so looking at a whole bunch of online resources, I did the typical suggestion of getting to these rails here that this tone arm is pulled along, and also the sensor is pulled along this rail. The sensor is right here. The sensor detects essentially where the blanks are in the record, and then relays that information to where to drop the tone arm if you're programming the playing of the record track by track. So the suggestion is always to clean these two rails to get the tackiness off of the old lubrication. The way I did that, I use this rubbing alcohol to take it off, and a lot of times if I can't get to the back side, I make something like this. I just kind of go around it, and go back and forth gently. I don't want to scrape the metal. But if you could get like a plastic one, paper clip, that's probably better. Just go back and forth along the metal. And you can do this with the oil that I put on as well. So I use sewing machine oil, and just kind of hold it underneath, drop it onto the paper clip, roll it, and slide it back and forth. Now, to trick the needle to go down, it actually has to act like it's playing. So what you have to do is you have to push this in here, okay, which is the tripping switch to indicate that the lid is down. So you got to push that in, and that way you can control the cueing or the movement of the tone arm with the buttons on the front. So I didn't use this. I had like a pair of tweezers, I think, and just kind of wedge that in there gently. You don't want to break it. Just kind of push down underneath the plastic, and it'll hold itself there very gently, and that way you can control it. Now over here, it's very hard to see. Okay, here's the belt that drives. So the motor, the gear. This is called the worm gear here. This gets lubricated as well too. All of this lubrication is necessary so that the rail doesn't hold any resistance as the sensor or the tone arm slides across it, because this record player is very sensitive to tension that is generated in the groove, and that's how this thing works. So as soon as this arm starts to move this way, it says, oh, the groove is moving in, so I need to advance the needle so that it stays in the middle of the groove. So the motor slowly moves the tone arm down the rail as the record is playing. Now, how it knows how much to move it is given by this optical sensor here, which has little holes in it. And essentially that's just related to the frequency of revolutions, which determines how much to pull it. And that's just given by the rotation of the motor. All right. So it's an optical sensor. So after cleaning it, it still didn't work. It still stayed on the track. And after that, most of the suggestions were junk it, or we don't really know what's wrong with it. But what turned out, I thought was really strange, is that the mechanism of the sense to pull the tone arm down the record is given by, there's a little piece of metal right there. It's hard to see, but it's right in there, and it sits in this little cavity here. Okay, so when this guy pulls back, the piece of, it's not metal, it might be a little piece of plastic, pulls out, okay, of that cavity, and it doesn't pull that much. Let's see if I can get a little closer look in there. It's kind of dark. Let me move my light here. So you see that piece of metal right there? It slides in that little hole right there, okay? And so what was happening was someone had messed with it and bent that piece of metal. I guess they changed the needle. I don't know what they did, but they took this piece of metal or plastic that's sitting in there and they had it bent up in here. So there was no detection whatsoever and it would never advance. The way the detection works is very, very sensitive. So the laser, there's a laser that's basically going one way and then getting detected on the other side. It relies on the intensity of the laser and the detection to advance. So even a very slight movement of that piece of plastic will lower the intensity of the detection of the laser and it will advance. It's not like it totally unblocks the laser or blocks the laser. It's just a partial block and it's an intensity detection circuit. All right, it's like cutting half the light down and it advances. This guy right here is an adjustment for the drop position on the first track of the record. Okay, so if the drop position on the first track is too far in or out, you use this to adjust its drop position on the first part. The other adjustment that you have, which I'm going to have to mess with here, is this guy. Now what this guy does, I think, is it adjusts the drop and I guess the lift position of the programmed tracks. So if I say to it play track 3, it knows where track 3 is given by this optical sensor here, right there that rides on that track. It knows where it is, but it has to relay that position to here, and the position is determined by circuitry, and that circuitry just drifts over time, and so it has to be adjusted so that it drops in the exact position that the sensor says to drop in. So I need to adjust this because I think it's picking up too early and dropping too early, so I need to adjust it so that it drops further inside the record. All right, so the next bit is, let's see, and so once I did that, it actually plays through, and that'll be coming up in just a second. Let's see if we can actually program this thing. I want to play Desperado first, and then Witchy Woman. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th track, and then the 2nd track. So I've turned it on, and now I want to say, oh, I want to play the 5th and the 2nd. Okay. Now what happens is now the needle is going to move and detect where those tracks are. Well, the needle doesn't detect it. The sensor that's moving in this block detects it. And it's moving in tandem with the tone arm. So once it gets done, I'm going to hit start. I think I could hit start now and it wouldn't matter. But so let's see what happens after it's done. Just as a side note, your record needs to be very clean with this setup because it knows to skip over dirty tracks. So I should go to number 2 and drop. It's looking. It didn't know where it was. Okay, well, interesting. So when track detection is impossible by the sensor, you do have some options over here to set the sensitivity of the sensor to low, medium, or high. The suggestion is to set it to high when you have very narrow grooves. Now, you can see that it did not sense track 5, so even though I selected track 5, it didn't see it. Now, there's definitely 5 tracks on here, so I don't know if you can see the grooves in the band, but Track 5 is the very last track, and it's kind of odd looking. So now let's hit start, and let's see if it actually drops it on track 2. Since it did see it, it actually passed track 2. Now it's past track 3. Now it's dropping on track 4. So that's actually track 4 that it dropped on. So it probably only thinks that there's 2 tracks on this record. So we can try another record to see if it works, or we can try to make some adjustments to the gain of the sensor to see if it's drifted so far that it just can't detect normal tracks on a record. Now this is a greatest hits record, so sometimes those tracks are very narrow to get enough songs on the side. So let's see. Okay, so I have put in Hotel California, which has 5 tracks on side B. So normally what can be done is you can select all of, actually it's already sensed this, so let me clear it, show you how this works. So normally you would just plop in all the tracks, okay, and it will scan the record and determine how many tracks is on the record. Let's see what it says. It detected 4 of them. Now I just put this on there and it sensed all 5. So now it only senses 4. So this is one of the problems with these tracker turntables with programming, is that there's a sensor on it and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So let's try it again. See, it won't let me select past 4. So let's see if it actually will work. Let's hit 2 and 4 and see what happens. Now it should go to track 2, which you can see is somewhere in this area here. It's just about there. Now you can see that it dropped too far into the song. So it actually dropped at track 3, I think. So it's actually in track 3, even though I told it to play track 2. So it did not sense track 2 in this case. So it dropped too far in. So it's actually playing track 3. It dropped about, I don't know, 20 seconds too far in. Okay, so now I finally found a record, hopefully, that will allow the record player to sense tracks. So there's 5 tracks on this record. So let's see what happens here. I'm gonna just go ahead and select, unlimited tracks and see how many tracks the sensor detects. And then we'll try to play some selected tracks. Okay, so it looks like it got all 5. All right, so now normally you would do that. You don't actually have to do that to select all of them. If you know how many tracks are on the record, you can just select the ones you want. So let's do 2. Take this out. Now the order of selection matters. So I want to do 2 and 1, and we'll go ahead and try 5. So it should advance to track 2. Now I've adjusted the drop point some to try to get it right on the track. It's pretty close. So it dropped right where track 2 started. So let's go ahead and now I'm just going to advance the video. So it's playing track 2. So I think if I hit track 1, it erases the programming. So let's just do that. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. No, it just skipped it. So I just skipped the song. It goes to 1. There we go. There's 1. Okay. So now let's hit 5. See if we can get over to 5. So right in there is track 5. Let's see. Here it goes. It's a very quiet track. All right. There you go. So I tried equals greatest hits and it didn't detect all the tracks. I tried Hotel California. It detected more tracks, but just not the correct number. And then I tried this Youthquake album, and it got the track. So, and this is actually on high sensitivity. I think if I put it on medium, it didn't make it. It didn't get all the tracks. So, you know, sometimes you can adjust I think you can adjust the sensor gain to essentially make the optical sensor a little brighter to hopefully detect the tracks a little better, but that's a very precarious adjustment without the correct instrumentation. I don't really want to mess with it as long as I can get it to work. Okay, so obviously if I hit repeat, it would play this song and just repeat and keep lifting up and going and so forth and so on. So let me just go ahead and show you underneath. I've put the case back on. All right, so there's the adjustment screw to pull the armature in or out in the tracks, you know, 2 through the end of the record. And this down here is the tracking force adjustment, and I think it's between 1 and 1.5, which is very acceptable. So 1.5 is not going to do any damage to your records. I don't know what that little white thing is. It means something, but I'm not sure. There's also a whole bunch of screws all around for the electrical adjustments. This is the slot that the optical sensor slides in. And if you notice, let me see if I pull this out here. I don't have a mat, so I was using another record just to sit it up. A lot of these have lasers to adjust to detect what type of record you actually have on there, and that's this selection here. You can detect, you can either play a 33 or 45, or you can place it on auto, and I'm on 30. I think I'm on 33. Let's see. Yeah, I'm on 33. So I think the way the auto function works is it just uses the optical sensor to track through the record, detect whether you're a 45 or a 33. Some of the other models had little lasers in the mat, and I think they could play 78s as well. And so they would just detect the edge of the record that way. But this model doesn't do that.